Um, we have Shravya Kuchibotla who's going to present her present this information session for geography.
Welcome. I'm really excited to present Shravya Kuchibotla today. Shravya has been a student or a participant at NorthSouth, just like many of you are, for many years, and she has two younger brothers who are currently also participating in various contests. I believe Shravya has done math, science, geography, public speaking, vocabulary, and I'm not sure, maybe even essay writing, but she's gone through the program and she's come back to volunteer. So we're very, very grateful to Shravya for taking the time to run this info session. I was originally scheduled to run it, but I felt like having a geo champion running the info session would probably be a lot more useful. Shravya is currently a student at Harvard University. She's studying neurobiology and economics. She's on a pre-med track. Um, and as you can see, over the last few years, she's very actively participated in many geography competitions, and she's won the 2014 North Carolina State B and the 2018 International Geography B in Berlin. So as a former Northsouth student, she herself has been continuously working to volunteer and also teach. She was, if any of you were there at the MIT National Finals, Shravya was part of the Meet the Pros who presented at MIT too. So I'm going to hand this over to Shravya, who will take you through, what the geography B is, what are the rules, the syllabus, how to study, and she'll hopefully share some of her study strategies with all of you, which will be very useful. Shravya, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to thank you for that. Thank you so much for Savita Aunty for the introduction and for Anbu Uncle for dealing with these technical difficulties and sharing his screen. Yeah, I'm very excited to be talking to everyone today. As Auntie said, I'm Shravya. I've been an NSF student for a while now. I started, I think, in 4th or 5th grade, and I'm now a second year in college. So very excited to be giving back today. Yeah, perfect. So Anbu Uncle went over this a little bit, talking about online registration and regional competitions and such. Our contest dates are here. They're in mid-April, late April, and then early May. And then Anbu Uncle also talked about registration and the 2 weeks deadline. That's a very, very hard deadline, so make sure you do register in time. Obviously, these are some other info sessions we have. Obviously, you're attending geography right now. I think that covers this slide. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so I'll talk a bit about what is geography, what are we looking for, why study geography, and then some study skills that I used a few years ago when I was competing, and even now I still love geography. So I still sometimes do these things on my own. But starting off with what is geography? So fundamentally, geography is the study of Earth. So that includes continents, landscapes, things like that. So more the physical geography of the world, along with countries, cities, geopolitics, more the economic or political side of geography, along with, as I mentioned, physical geography, human geography, or cultural geography, looking at languages, religion, food, culture, etc. My mom, after having seen me and my brothers also participate in geography because they really enjoy it, always jokes that you can't go too far in any field without having to deal with geography, whether that is watching the news and learning about COVID strains that are developing in the UK and South Africa, or going to the grocery store and looking at like the made in Vietnam or processed in this country, whatever, things like that. So it's truly a very all-encompassing type of field. So I'm very excited to be sharing this with you and hopefully inspiring a few or many of you to participate in the Geography B. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I talked a little bit about this on why geography. Geography is so fundamental to any field, any encounter, you know, even in college when meeting people, it's really helpful. It helps us function as global citizens. Uncle, I think the screen changed from my
Sorry.
end. Yeah, so it helps us interact as global citizens, and I mentioned a few of these different lenses through which to look at geography: physical, political, cultural, historical, environmental, etc. And then looking at a very macro level at continents, all the way down to even towns or villages. It's all very important. Major rivers, oceans, things like that. And one of the coolest things I think that is not as often studied for the geography B, but also very important is physical geography. So looking at climate change, desertification, El Nino, La Nina, things like that. And of course, political geography is also very important. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so the competition. So how do you know if your kid is maybe interested in the geography B or something that you should bring up with them? If they love traveling to new places or reading books about different countries or cultures, watching the news, even watching Jeopardy is a sure sign. Looking at maps, things like that are pretty sure signs that a student is already interested in geography and learning geography. But even if they're not doing that already, kind of exposing them to those things, as I said, geography, the news, things like that really pique their interest. So these are all great ways to get your kid interested in the geography B. We can go to the next slide. So Anbu Uncle mentioned a lot of this, so I'll go pretty quickly through this, but all the contests will be held online this year. Students just in a quiet room with a computer, camera, and speaker, and headphones. So we're trying to stimulate the real competition as much as possible.
So sorry about that. Savita is presenting her screen. That's all. So don't worry.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we are in slide 8, I believe, Savita.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, 7.
We're on 7.
7.
Possible. Yes, thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah.
Start. Thank you, Savita. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to say this was actually my fault, not at all the NSF presenters. My computer was the one that was having issues. So thank you so much for both of you. Yeah, so just talking a bit more about the contest rules, the Zoom session instructions will be sent out, as Anbu Uncle said. And then I think he touched on this a little bit. There's the junior geography B and senior geography B. Junior geography B being up to grade 3, including kindergarten. If you have a kindergartner interested, they can also join. And the senior geography B actually mirrors the National Geographic B years, which is grades 4 through 8. And then both of these competitions will have 2 phases. The first phase will be a written round, and then the oral round will have, the oral round is phase 2, and it's just each person has a different question. Phase 1, the written round, everyone has the same question. There's 1 point for a correct answer and 0 points for an incorrect answer. This is very important because it's to a student's advantage to just guess an answer, as opposed to just saying pass or I don't know. Especially in questions where they say this country in Africa, this country in South America, something like that, where they're able to narrow it down to a country. It's better just to answer. The tiebreaker rules are published on the website. They're a bit complicated, so I won't go through them, but basically just try to do as well as possible for that. And then national finals, maybe Savita Auntie wants to talk about it a little later, but it's TBD at this point. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so first I'll talk a bit more about the junior geography B, what to study, what to expect, and then transition to the senior geography B. As I mentioned before, junior geography is up to 3rd grade. And it's more, obviously we just have one world to dig into, but I'd say junior geography B is a bit more surface level as compared to the senior geography B. It's general physical geography, so major landforms, major lakes, major water bodies, with a specific focus on US and India. So in the US, states, capitals, largest cities, physical geography could include knowing what states the Mississippi River goes through, what states the Rocky Mountains go through, what states border the Gulf of Mexico, things like that, along with national parks such as Great Smoky Mountains, things like that. Indian geography includes pretty much a similar study plan as the U.S. geography, so I won't go into it too much, but there is a bit more of a focus on the cultural aspect for India, I would say. So knowing what state Kathak comes from, or which state has a specific type of dialect or something like that. And then world geography is kind of it obviously includes the US and India, but is a bit more surface level. So knowing these things for other countries, China, Russia, United Kingdom, Australia, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I can go through all these again, but they're pretty much the same for all three of them. We can go to the next slide. And then senior geography B syllabus is also, as I said, we just have one world, so it's also the same thing, just a bit more detail. So in, say, the junior geography B, if they give options, or they say Raleigh is the capital of which state, the answer would be North Carolina. But in, say, the senior geography B, they might ask, what is the capital of North Carolina? So it's a bit more detailed, or a bit more of a difficult question, so to speak. But overall, study plan would be very similar for both. General physical geography, US, India, world, political, historical, physical, cultural, economic geography, and then current events is also very pertinent, especially, I mean, I feel like now the news has been saturated with information about COVID, but especially in the past, when there might be a war in a certain country, or the president of the United States went and traveled to another country to have peace talks, things like that would also be counted under current events. And then one thing important to note, and I think it's probably the biggest feature that's different between the National Geographic B and NSF, is that up to 25% in both categories can be from Indian geography. Whereas obviously National Geographic considers India as just one of the many countries that they can ask questions from. NSF really tries to emphasize the Indian heritage that many of its students has. So they tend to ask a bit more questions on Indian geography. So I would say study Indian geography is very similarly to studying US geography for NSF. We can go to the next slide. Yes, so books and references. I studied back in the days when, yes, we had the internet, and yes, we used Google Maps and stuff, but I also really prefer the books. I don't know if anyone's really using books anymore, but a few really great books that I personally found were the Afghanistan to Zimbabwe book, which is at the very bottom here. It's super detailed, senior geography level. Preparing for the Geography B number 6 here is more foundational, so for Junior Geography B. And then all these books are very good. 1001 questions, how to ace the National Geographic B, and then one app that I've heard really good things about was the GeoB Challenge app. I think there's another one. I think it's called a National Geographic app. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. I can check on it, but both are very good. The other thing that one could do is just like Jeopardy or Trivia, Quiz Bowl, those types of competitions also have resources, and you could study those, but just focus on the geographic aspect as well. We can go to the next slide. So I did give one quick example earlier between junior and senior geography B. Here are a couple more examples. As you can see, it's like, say, question number 2 is about a whole continent. And the other thing I wanted to highlight with these questions is that you can see that they come from like so many different avenues. The first one is more of a tourist attraction type of question. The second one is more physical geography. Third one is more cultural or religious. Fourth one is straight up geography, what borders what country, things like that. So geography is very interesting in that there's many different layers to study. So really emphasize that type of thing when encouraging your student to study for this competition. We can go to the next slide.
I just wanted to take a second here. I know the screen shows multiple choices for all the questions. This is because we are currently in the implementing the online contest, but the IT team is looking into a possibility of having the students type in the answers where you don't have multiple choice. So if we are able to implement it, of the 25, probably the last 10 questions will not have multiple choice questions. But for most part, junior geography B will be a lot more simpler than the senior level.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And I feel like I'm going to get this question, so I'm going to answer it beforehand. Spelling, no student will be penalized for spelling as long as it's obvious what they're trying to say. The other thing to note is that typically the questions will go from easiest to hardest in the competition. So if and also with any test, if a student doesn't know one of the questions, just ask them to keep moving on, kind of thing. And then, so going on to the senior geography B sample questions, these are a bit more, I don't want to say complicated, a bit more complex, so to speak. Like the first question is saying this country's capital is to this country as this other country's capital is to what country. So they require a bit more analytical thinking. So, and then they're also a bit more detailed as compared to just what is the capital of this country or where can you find this. But as you can see, the content itself is very similar. We can go to the next slide. Oh, I think we skipped a slide. Oh, I don't. So I have the tips and tricks on my screen.
Yeah. So talk about the rest, and I'll pull up that presentation. I didn't have the updated version here. I'll come back.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, they're all comments and things that I've already talked about, but I will go through some tips and tricks I have. My very first tip is not to forget about physical geography. I think oftentimes people learn about countries, capitals, currencies, and they totally forget to learn about what type of glacier creates a certain type of river or something like that. That is also very important to learn. So make sure you do that. I call this approach layering up your studying. As Auntie mentioned, I have two younger brothers who, one is in middle school, one is in elementary school. So there's a lot of these things that I tell them often as well. And what I mean by layering up their studying is when you're first starting out, don't try to memorize the most difficult concepts at once. Start off with just looking at the map, understanding where major countries are, just taking a few days to familiarize yourself with bordering countries, major land features, things like that. Then you should maybe go on to memorizing the country capitals and then slowly go on to the larger cities. Then ask your parents or whoever to quiz you with, what country borders these two other countries, and slowly kind of transitioning like that. Then major rivers, bodies of water, large islands, peninsulas, mountain ranges, then going down to the mountain level. And just always making sure you review each of these layers, so to speak, as you continue down. Another tip I have specifically for NSF is to study India in depth, because obviously up to 25% of the questions can come from India. And then I mentioned this a bit earlier as well. Try to incorporate geography into your daily life. Don't just say like, oh, my parents are making me study for an hour or 2 hours or whatever number of hours or amount of time. So after that, I'm just done. I'm gonna go watch some TV and totally forget about geography. Try to watch the news. Try to become interested in geography in the sense that wherever you look, you'll see it. And then I would say Google Maps, regular maps, globes, etc. are your best friend. Oftentimes I work with like people who are preparing for the state or even preparing for nationals, and they often feel like they've gone to a stage where they don't need to look at the map anymore since they have a mental map. But sometimes it's easy to forget little things. So always make it a point to continue looking at maps. I personally find filling out blank maps is super helpful, particularly when first starting out and trying to learn where each of the countries are. And also, there's many questions, as I mentioned, saying like which country borders Libya and Algeria, something like that. It's always good to have that mental map. Um, Take practice quizzes online. Like I listed a few there: Sporkle, Shepherd Software, Fun Trivia, Trivia Plaza, etc. that are really good with kind of solidifying these facts that you learn. Um, my second to last fact is ask your parents, siblings, friends, whoever to quiz you. Especially, this is not so much for NSF, but even for NSF, this will help. When you're studying for the National Geographic B, they orally ask a lot of questions. Pretty much the entire competition is oral. So if you study everything and just have, a specific pronunciation in your mind, if you hear it pronounced differently, you might not recognize it unless you're used to hearing people with different accents, different intonations, different perceptions speak those things to you orally. So I think that's very useful. Also, sometimes when you're studying, you're like, I can't look at this country's map anymore. I'm so tired of doing this. It's really good to have that kind of change in your studying as well. And then finally, this is very cheesy, but it's so important. You should have fun. NSF has many different competitions. So if for whatever reason geography is like, you're like, I hate geography, I'd rather do math or spelling or science or something else. I don't like this period of time, then maybe geography isn't for you. But also on the flip side, I think going from that attitude to saying I really love geography because it's very useful and it comes up in many different aspects in my daily life, in the world, is also like a very easy shift to make because geography is so versatile. So really try to make it a point to have fun, really try to enjoy your studying time as well. That's all I have. I don't know if auntie or uncle have anything else to
Yeah.
say. If you guys have any questions
So,
also.
so my kids went through competing in Geography B too. One of the things that we found was pretty helpful is if you have like a long hallway and a wall over there, putting up a world map, the map of US or India, you get these wall maps, put it in, and anytime you're walking around, you'd be able to look at it. We also had, a poster of flags or a poster of the country so that every time the child looks at it, he or she will be able to like catch on to, especially the junior geography kids will be able to kind of, get familiar with the name of the country and, the capital that's associated with it, or the way the flag looks, and, those sort of nuances, they'll be able to pick it up. Another thing that a lot of parents had shared is they would do a daily fun fact, put a question, put it on the refrigerator at the beginning of the day, and the kids would have all day to, research or go to school, come back, still be able to, have some time to go look at the map or do some research and come up with that solution at the end of the day. Like Shravya said, not, geography might not be for everyone. If it starts being a sort of a burden, I would request the parents to like give them a break. It's okay if they don't compete 1 year. And if they have renewed interest, let them come back the following year, or even just give them like a few days break, see if they're interested in doing it. Sometimes they just might not want to compete, but just want to learn about geography, but that's still good. Anything as you expand your knowledge about the world that's around you, will just make you a better citizen. You'll have great conversation points. So this is more than just a geography B. This is more than just a competition. The way we look at it, not knowing where it is more critical now than ever to know what's happening in various countries and how it's affecting the world, or the little bubble that we live in. If there is a volcano somewhere, I know when there was a volcanic eruption in Iceland about a decade ago, it stopped the air traffic, right? So we were affected, even though, the volcano was happening in Iceland. So it is always important to know about the world around you, and I think encouraging your kids to be in tune with what's going on, talk to them about things, and when you go on vacations or you go on a road trip, discuss about the various landscapes, the difference in the landscapes, the difference in the temperature, the difference in the culture, how people speak and what they practice. All these will just enrich your life and the life of your kids. So yeah, so that was my spiel about this geography. Anything else to add, Shravya?
Yeah, I was gonna say the maps thing is very important. Oh, yeah, like as I said, I have two younger brothers, and the younger one, he's 9, and my parents and I never actually tried to teach him any geography or anything, but we had a world map, and he would always try to look at that, and he would ask questions, and then suddenly, like, out of the blue, he'd like learned all the capitals and was like, oh, this country borders this country, and it's very organic, and I think it makes the life of the parents a lot easier as well when the kid is actually interested in the competition or in the topic than trying to force them into it as well. Yeah, I think we can open the floor for questions, just if you can send it in the chat, maybe.
Sure, let's take a look. I don't see any questions. Let me look at the questions. Hang on. Yeah, there are no questions over here. But if the parents have questions later on, they can always email us at contest@northsouth.org. And we will have this recording available for anybody who missed the info session. Spread the word about the contest. I know this is a unique year where we are continuing the online contest. We did a short version of it in 2020. We are hopefully going to go back to on-site traditional contests in 2022. The Zoom sessions, I think everybody should be familiar with how Zoom sessions work. So that's what we will be using for the contest. Thank you very much, Ravya. I think we don't have anything else to share. I know Anbu had to step out because he had to take his kids to class. But thank you very much for taking the time to do the presentation. I'm sure everybody, all the attendees found it very, very useful. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions in the chat or in the questions box if we want to
answer them.
Back? Yeah, people started putting them in right after you said.
Oh, they did. Okay. Can you see it? Because I think I lost it.
Yeah, I can say them and then one of us can answer them.
Yeah, sure.
One person asked, for senior geography B, do the points carry from round 1 to round 2? And the answer is yes. So they 1 point for each correct answer in both round 1 and round 2, and then the total scores are added up for the final score.
Yeah, everybody gets to participate in phase 2. So there is no cutoff score from phase 1 that will allow you to qualify into phase 2. This is for the regionals. When we talk about the national finals, we are still trying to determine whether by the the timeline is sometime in August. If we can do it on site, it most probably will be in Seattle. If not, we will hold some version of an online national final. So in order to qualify for the national finals like any other year, we will have a cutoff score that will be announced after all the regionals are done, and anybody who qualifies with that cutoff score will be able to attend the national finals.
That's actually the next question somebody had about national, so that's perfect. Someone asked, what is the cutoff score for junior versus senior? And The question paper is different for both of them, so the cutoff scores vary depending on the year.
Right, and the cutoff score will also be different for the grades. So for example, for junior geography B, you have grade 1, 2, and 3. They will have obviously a lower cutoff score for the lower grades. So it'll also be based on the grades.
Mm-hmm. And someone actually had a question about the regionals. Is the contest among members of the same chapter? The answer is yes, I believe.
Yes, yeah. So you will be registering with your chapter. And the only difference between, the traditional contests and this year is that it'll be online, and whereas the previous years it was on site. So you will be ranked among your peers in your chapter, and the awards will also be given at the chapter level.
Someone asked if someone is entering 4th grade in September, will they be a junior or senior? For this year, they'll be junior geography B, and then from next year onwards, they'd be considered in the senior category.
Right.
And then one person asked, will the winner from each chapter advance to the nationals? So it's based on the cutoff score. So one year, 3 people from one chapter could make it to nationals and nobody from one chapter, and it could switch. It's just based on that standardized cutoff score across the country. And is phase 1 and phase 2 contests on the same day? Yes.
Yeah, back to back. Yeah.
There's one more. Will the cutoff score be different for kids in different grades? Yes. Auntie just mentioned that. Depending on the grade, the cutoff scores can be different. Yes, a different cutoff scores based on grade can apply to senior geography B as well.
Yes.
That's all the questions I see.
Okay. Thank you. And like I said, if you guys have any more questions, the website currently, we were contemplating if we were going to have a oral round, the phase 2, because of logistics. But we even had a meeting this morning, and we have decided that we'll have 4 rounds. And the website shows that it will be 5 rounds, so that the rules will be updated to reflect what we are going to implement. We will have a Meet the Pros session for geography that is coming up, I believe, towards the end of February. Take a look at the calendar for the workshops on the website. I believe Shravya has offered to also be a part of that panel. Nihar Janga, who was one of the National Geographic B champions a couple years ago, he's going to be there. Atreya Malana, who is the runner-up to Nihar Janga's year, he's going to be there. So it's going to be filled with these geo genius kids who will run that Meet the Pro panel, and you will be able to have an interactive session with them and ask them the questions, and they will share more. Shravya shared some, but there will be more details about the topics at the workshop. So keep an eye out for it and register early. With that, I think we've hit the 3 o'clock mark, and if there are no more questions in the question panel, I'd like to thank everyone who attended, and thank you, Shravya, for doing an amazing job as usual. And we will see you guys at the workshop. Thank you.